We have a very limited amount of time to hear from my extremely incredible panel, so I am going to, by way of introduction, read the merest bit of a bio of each of them so that you can hear from them, so that we can learn from them, and we can have some fun. It's going to be a very casual conversation. They are going to interact with each other. Be thinking, if we have any time at the end, if you have a question that you would like to ask any of these women, just have it ready when we get started. So, are we ready? Let's go. Let's hear a bit. This is Andrea Brown. Andrea is founder of I'm going to read these so I can stay on time here, people. She is founder of Hannah K Clothing, children's clothing, and she started her entrepreneurial journey in 2000, turning a basement into a fashion hub. With a single trunk show, she revolutionized children's fashion, and now around 150 shows are hosted nationwide biannually. Known for custom designs reflecting childhood joy, Andrea's creativity earned her the Belk Southern Designers Award. Skillfully balancing her entrepreneurship with family, she's a loving wife, devoted mother to 3 adult children and a poodle named Benji, and she's expecting her first grandchild in April. Her story is one of determination, passion, dedication, which has inspired many in the fashion sector. From humble beginnings, Andrea's uplifting life and legacy leave an indelible mark on fashion and hearts worldwide. Please welcome Birmingham's own icon of children's fashion, Andrea Brown. Next is Heather Durham. After graduating from the University of Alabama with a degree in fashion merchandising and a minor in marketing, Heather began her career as a buyer in the fashion industry and quickly progressed to marketing director. Her creative talents later catapulted her to a position as an art director at a national publisher where she was responsible for several magazine titles. These positions exposed her to a variety of acclaimed photographers who in turn piqued her curiosity and interest in pursuing photography for herself. After the birth of her first child, she launched her own full-time photography business and has never looked back as passion has become her work. She has been published in People, Condé Nast Traveler, Forbes, Travel and Leisure, Sports Illustrated, Garden and Gun, Brides, and too many more to mention. She travels the world photographing celebrities, professional athletes, music artists, brands, designers, CEOs, and authors. She lives in Nashville. She's the mother of 2 children. So welcome back to Birmingham, our beloved and creative Heather Durham. The middle of our panel is Jennifer Hunt. Jennifer is the founder and CEO of Dogwood Hill, a leader in luxurious, artfully driven holiday cards, stationery, and wedding paper. After graduating with a Master of Accountancy from the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, she settled in Birmingham, where she's had successful careers, first as a certified public accountant and then as an art gallery owner. In 2015, she launched Dogwood Hill, where a collective of more than 30 artists and a team of graphic designers bring art to life through thoughtful product design. Dogwood Hill has been featured in Better Homes and Gardens, House Beautiful, Southern Living and Veranda, as well as Brides, Glamour, MarthaStewart.com, and a highlight on the Today Show. Jennifer was selected as a Tory Burch Fellow in 2019. Her husband, Buddy, joined Dogwood Hill in 2018 and now leads the company's wholesale division. Their free time is spent keeping up with their 2 young boys. Please welcome the multi-talented Jennifer Hunt. Pretty in pink is Holly Lawler, the founder and president of the Lawler Group, a full-service communications company. She graduated with a degree in public relations and speech communication from the University of Alabama. Before beginning her own company, her positions included public relations account director, vice president of public relations and marketing, and community relations at various organizations and firms. She also served as press secretary for a statewide political campaign. She worked for Senator Shelby's press department and press office and for the Concerned Women of America's Media in Washington, D.C. She has served on too many boards for me to talk about, and some commissions to which she's been appointed, including the Alabama State Service Commission, where she still serves. She's on the University of Alabama's Capstone Agency Board, Sight Savers America Board, the local or state boards of the American Advertising Federation, the Public Relations Society of America, and the Public Relations Council of Alabama. She was the recipient of Ad Woman of the Year, Public Relations Director of the Year, and Newcomer of the Year in recognition of her new company. Named to Yellowhammer News' list of 50 most powerful and influential players in Alabama politics and business, please welcome the incredible Holly Lawler. And familiar to all of us, Ashley McMicken is founder and CEO of Ashley Mack's Cafe and Catering and Market in Birmingham. Always loving the kitchen and all things food, Ashley decided to turn her hobby into a catering business in 2005. A mere 2 years later, Ashley and her husband Andy opened their first brick-and-mortar location in Bluff Park. They now have 5 locations in the Birmingham area. Ashley Mack's has been voted in Birmingham's Best Awards for many years and has been featured in countless newspaper and magazine articles. She received the Small Business and Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2012 and was named Retailer of the Year for the state of Alabama in 2022. Ashley lives in Birmingham with her husband of 20 years, Andy, and their 4 children, Trey, Ryder, Jackson, and Mallie. Last year, Ashley wrote and launched her first cookbook, Ashley Mack's Kitchen. Give it up for the amazing Ashley McMicken. I'm not just in awe of this gathering. I am. This is amazing. Y'all are amazing. Well, let's jump right in here because I do want to get going with this. Our first question is, would you tell us, well, let me just start this. I had my hair cut yesterday. So I said to the lady that cuts my hair, now, what was the hardest part about starting your business? And she said, pulling the trigger to do it. So let me ask you that. What about your sense or experience of being called out to take the risk of starting something on your own? And Andrea, let's start with you on that one.
Okay. First of all, I feel a little bit like an imposter up here, and I think that my bio is probably a little bit of an exaggeration. I'm definitely the anomaly of this group up here, and I think the biggest risk for me when I started my business was just that I didn't have the skills to have a children's clothing line. I honestly had never done anything creative. I had never been thought of as creative and was honestly the least likely person to start a children's clothing line. And still, even in my office today, they don't let me near the scissors. So that's just, not something that I do. But I always loved beauty when I was little and was drawn to beautiful things. And but I really, one moment that sticks out in my mind was when I was in the 6th grade. I remember so distinctly standing in front of a bulletin board, and it was displaying all of the best penmanship in the whole 6th grade. And of course mine was not up there because I have terrible penmanship. Both of my daughters are here. They both work with me. And they always tell me they love my handwriting. I'm like, y'all are only saying that because you're my daughters. But anyway, so I remember standing there in front of the bulletin board and just thinking to myself, I'm not good at anything. I can't even write neatly. And it wasn't like a self-pity thing. It was just a thought that I had. And I remember later when I started Hannah Cakes, it was literally just a thought I had because I loved dressing my children and I loved vintage fabrics at the time. But later, it was like God showed me that He remembered that 6th grade little girl, and He remembered me having that thought, and it was just such a sweet gift. Part of the reason was a sweet gift from Him to me, of Him giving me that little niche of something that I was good at, and of course, I had to have a team around me that that could help me do it, which has been so wonderful. But He gave me that, and then He also gave me just a passion to help children, just to want children to feel uniquely beautiful. And that, our mantra is, I'm joyfully and wonderfully made, and we're completely custom, and it enables moms to showcase their children's personality by also being able to be the designer.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Anyone else want to weigh in on your experience as how you started your business?
I can start out. My situation's a little bit different, but I actually had, my dad had always told me when I was young, he was like, always kind of think about 5 years ahead, what do you want to do 5 years ahead? And I had parents that are both entrepreneurs, so I would come down for breakfast in the morning and they would have articles cut out of the newspaper and they'd slide them over and they'd say, you need to read this. And so my whole life I was constantly kind of taught from a sense of learning and then watching them like how they built their business and how much flexibility they had. And I loved that and being able to kind of model them. But I had this kind of, I guess, you know, there's, when you think about God, like you think about what you want to do with your life and what you want to do with your career, and I was very career oriented, but there were certain circumstances that happened and I was like, I feel like God's sending me in this direction to become an entrepreneur. And so I had been married about 5 years and I was traveling all the time. My husband traveled all the time for work. And I found I was expecting my first baby and I got mono. And I went into the doctor and I was like, oh, I'm so sick, I'm so tired. And they're like, oh, you're expecting a baby, but you also have mono. And I was like, oh no, this is not good. So I lost my baby at that time. And then my mother-in-law was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, all within like a couple month period. And so that was hard, but a lot of times I feel like things like that happen and God says you need to change your direction or your focus, and you can still use your gifts to glorify me, but maybe you need to do something different. So at that time I was really like, you know, if I kind of scale back and I don't travel as much, you know, maybe I can start my own business. The economy was not great. This was like in 2008 when everything was not good, but I was like, Lord, I'm going to listen to you telling me to kind of quiet my soul in what I'm doing, and I'm going to take a chance and I'm going to start my own business, and then I'm going to be able to help my mother-in-law and take her to doctor's appointments, and then if it's your will for me to have another child, then that will happen. And so that's kind of my start. So in a lot of ways it was a sad and hard time, but it was a time where I feel like sometimes God just stops us in our steps and he says, I want you to focus on me and what, you know, my desire is for you in your life and your career, and that's kind of how he started it for me.
I'll go. Okay, so mine also has bits and pieces of y'all's, but then also different. I was not career oriented. I did go to the University of Alabama and was in the business school, but really I was going there to get my MRS degree, to play soccer, and be in a short. So sorry, my mom's not here, so I can't say sorry for that. I wasn't going for that education. So I did meet my husband in college and got married soon after. But I really just wanted to be a mom. My mom stayed home. I'm one of 4. And so my mom stayed home with us growing up, and I just kind of thought, this looks great. I want to be a mom. And my husband's an accountant, and I was working at an advertising agency. My degree from Alabama is in marketing and advertising, and really just wanted to go to culinary school, grew up cooking, thought that's kind of could be a little something I could do. But my husband was like, you need to get a job, let's not pay for more school. And so when I got the job at the ad agency, another girl that was with me, working like next to me in my little cubicle, loved to cook as well. And so we really started this as like a little hobby. So I worked full time, came home at night, was cooking for like friends and family, catering for my grandmother. And really the thing that kind of made us take that kind of risk was just over and over again, my husband kind of being like, people love your food, like I think you should kind of think about really doing this. I'm like, no, like we're gonna have babies, like I don't really want to, how would that work, you know, I don't know if I want to do that. And ended up struggling through infertility as Ashley Max was kind of growing and becoming more of a real business. But still, even then, for me, it was more of like, okay, I'll keep doing this until we have kids. And then my husband's an accountant, like we'll kind of do something else, you know. So still a very mom and pop thing. But for me, kind of looking back, it was the Lord over and over again providing. So I never felt, I would say, I was probably doing this for about 10 years before I said this is what I'm called to do. So like I was like real stuck and like, oh, I don't know, how long are we gonna do this? And so Proverbs 16:9 says, a man plans, oh my gosh, I don't stop this every time I say it, try to say it in front of someone. A man plans his way in his heart, the Lord directs his steps. And so I had all these grand plans, but really God was the one that was slowly calling me, and I never heard any kind of audible voice or, you know, this is what you're called to do. But like as soon as I'd be like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, we get a call for like another huge catering event or something, and then we kept struggling to get pregnant. So it was like, okay, what am I going to do? Sit at home, you know? So anyway, so for me it was kind of that risk was slowly over time the Lord being like, this is what I'm calling you to do. So that's kind of how mine went.
Yeah. I'm sensing the
commonality of the trust and the courage, not really knowing what you were doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, you don't have this long 10-year plan when you're starting it. Exactly. Good. Heather, would you speak to a situation you might have encountered in your business where the unexpected happened and you thought, I can't believe this has happened. I do not know what to do. And what happened?
Sure.
Tell us about that.
So I am from Birmingham, even though I live in Franklin. I've been in Franklin for 7 years. Birmingham will always be home. It's like, it's home, it just is. So I had established my business for 14 years here, so I was just kind of in this rhythm, loving what I did. My husband at the time was not happy in his job, and so he had been looking for jobs, and he got offered a job in Nashville, and we talked about it, and we were like, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna move to Nashville. And what that meant for me was basically starting over. Like, you know, when you start a business where your roots are, where you've grown up, you know, you just kind of, you have your target people, right? And people know you, and you've been here a long time. And moving to Nashville was, it was daunting because I felt like I was moving to a much larger city that was growing by leaps and bounds, and there was a lot of creative talent. There were so many amazing photographers in Nashville, and I just felt like this big. But I was determined. I didn't know where to start. We moved. We were living in a corporate apartment for 3 months. You know, my kids weren't in school yet. They were in the transition. It was all the things. And so they got in school, and I was like, okay, I'm going to meet with somebody every day. I'm going to, you know, DM people. I'm going to meet for coffee. I'm going to reach out to, you know, magazine editors. I'm going to find my place here. And so, you know, it was hard. I didn't know where to start. I had never moved before. I'd been in Birmingham my whole life and then gone to school at the University of Alabama, come back to Birmingham. So this was like a whole new world. I was learning my kids' schools. I was meeting new people. We were finding a house. It was starting over. And it was humbling because when you've had a business for 14 years and you go somewhere new, no one knows who you are. No one knows if you're any good. No one knows if you can deliver. And so it's almost like you're selling yourself again. And I remember being creatively restless for like the first 2 years. And in Nashville, it's a town of really building trust. Because as you know, there's a lot of interesting people in Nashville, and you sometimes get to work with them and sometimes don't. And they call it the 5-year town. And so I was like, am I really going to have to wait 5 years to get business? But it happened a little sooner than that. But slowly but surely, I started getting, you know, magazine work and started, you know, growing portrait work. But I felt like I had one foot in both cities. I was still going back to Birmingham. I was still traveling. And then, you know, it was just a slow, long game of digging in. And I don't really know where to start, but I'm going to reach out to everybody, and I'm determined to find my place. And, you know, it was just one of those things where the Lord just kept reminding me, I've got you. And that's like kind of been the story of my life. Like the Lord is always like, I know this is unexpected, but I've got you. And I'm going to prove it to you. And I'm going to be so real to you. And he was. So, yeah.
Right.
So I grew. And I remember reaching out to wedding planners. Like, reaching out to wedding planners. Like, I really want to work with you. I really want to work with you. But everybody kind of has their people, you know, and you move in and you're new. And finally, after like 3 years, I started working with, you know, these wedding planners. But it's just, I think the big lesson in all of it is, you know, anytime something is unknown, it's just a lot of prayer and a lot of specific prayers. Because I love if you pray specifically, and when you answer specifically, your faith grows and your trust grows, and you can see the Lord really at work if you ask for very specific things. And that was, you know, kind of my story. I would ask for very specific things, and then I would see it may not be in my timing. It wasn't right away, and I had to learn a lot of patience, but it came, and I trusted him to provide that, and he did.
Good. Any other unexpected snafus that you had to deal with? I'm sure there are many, actually, right? So.
If you have a business, I think there are lots of mistakes along the way. I mean, I wasn't planning on speaking to this specifically, but I think when I started the business back in 2015, right away asked Holly Holland to come on with me as our creative director, because even though I did have the business experience and had this accounting background, and it was a really kind of fun thing to think about the fact that I was going to have this business, you know, when I was thinking about it. it could be a business that could bring all of my skill sets together and all of my interests as well. You know, it wasn't just the business background, but it was also the things that I really enjoyed creatively pursuing. You know, I didn't realize until I started looking back on it how much I loved beautiful paper. I mean, my wedding invitations, I had them print them 3 times. I mean, silly things like that I look back on and I'm like, oh, I really did love paper, even back then. You know, when we started the company, and Holly brought all of her design expertise to the table, she brought the professional design expertise. We had this idea of how the company was going to get set up. And we got into it and went through our first holiday season and we were like, we were wrong. Like, this is not how we need to set this up. And we had to just revamp the whole thing. And so we realized also, that was in 2015, and at the end of that holiday season, we were like, oh, well, whoops, we don't have anything else to sell except for holiday. So we get to January and there's nothing on the website that anybody can buy. But it also was probably a little bit of a blessing because it gave us this time to restructure and figure out, okay, we've been through a holiday season, we know that the structure of how we had it set up is not gonna work. And so we had that whole next year to really kind of build and prepare until the next holiday season. And also in that time, we were coming up with things that we could put on the website and sell all year. So 2017 was our first year where you could buy something on the website from January 1st until December 31st. You know, so that was definitely a learning experience. So we thought we had this figured out, and we really did not. So, and then what we felt was like, oh my goodness, we can't make any money right now because there's nothing. I mean, who's buying holiday cards in January? But it actually provided that time frame for us to like kind of revamp again. So
Yes. Anyone else on that? Kind of dovetailing into that, what's a lesson you might have learned from a mistake you made that we all might benefit from, so we don't have to make that same mistake?
I mean, I learned early on, I remember, in the very beginning when we had a dress that the trim shrank on it and the rest of the dress didn't, and we just were getting a few phone calls about it. And so I went ahead, just really bothered me because from the very beginning I just wanted our customer service to be just really important and for the customers to know that they could trust us and that we cared. And so I was on my way to spring break and I got Emily, my business manager, to give me every single customer and their phone number who had ordered that dress, and I called them on my way and just said, look, this is going to happen, but we have figured out, if you haven't watched it yet, but we figured out how to sew it on in a way where it won't shrink, and we're sending you a new dress. And so it was just, the lesson I learned was just that building trust early on was more important than, making money or making a sale early on. And it, that's just, and just that small things matter. So.
Good.
I was going to say, Jennifer and I were talking about this right before, of just, I could name a million mistakes. I could name a mistake from every single day of my career because I make them every day, but just being gentle with yourself and gracious and being okay to fail, I think is huge because, all of us up here in, some form or fashion, we're going to fail, to doing something. And you can't ever do something great. My husband, it's funny, we were talking to our kids the other night about some sports stuff going on with one of my kids and talking about Michael Jordan, how, I'm sure y'all heard the quote, but it's like how many shots he missed and how many layups he missed and how many this he missed and how many this, and it's like you have to fail a lot to then succeed, and you can't ever succeed if you're not going to try. And so, yeah, I've had plenty, and we'll have plenty ahead of me, I'm sure, so.
Wisdom in that. Well, let's jump over to some specifics then. So what are some resources you have found to be helpful as a small business owner, like local business organizations, professional mentoring, executive coaching, or whatever, that would be helpful to women thinking about starting their own business? Heather, you want to start with that?
Sure, yeah. I think it's so important to have a network and a community. And for me, I think all these women have people that work for them, and they are in an environment of a lot of other people. For me, it's me and my chocolate lab, Scout, and she doesn't really participate or help.
But she's really cute.
Really cute. She snores a lot while I'm working, which is annoying. But, so I know for me, I crave just the community of people to bounce ideas off of, to share experiences with, to get advice. And I think we all got a little complacent in COVID, and we got used to not meeting people face to face. And after COVID, I was like, you know what, I gotta go back to that. Like, I wanna meet up with people for coffee, and I'm better in a one-on-one than like, big networking things, but those are important too. And so I really said, okay, I'm gonna really get back into that. And so I started having more face-to-face meetings. I joined WIPA, which is an organization, Wedding International Professionals Association, I think that's right. And it's just great because it's, planners, it's photographers, it's videographers, it's everybody in the wedding industry, and we all share and we all learn from each other, and we can all share ideas, we can refer each other, that sort of thing. So that's been really good for me. I say get involved with organizations within your industry. I think it's important to always be a student. Like, I've been in this business for 20 years, and I feel like there is so much more to learn. And I feel like when you get to the point where you feel like you've arrived, then you get complacent and you get too comfortable and you don't grow and you don't kind of push yourself. And so I recently was invited to be part of a mastery group, which is, some of you may know her, KT Mary. She's a really wonderful, kind of renowned world photographer, and she mentors and coaches. And so I took the leap and started being mentored by her in September, and it's a 12-month program. And it has been so valuable. I mean, I'm on Zoom calls with, photographers from around the world, and we all challenge each other. And just the other day, we were on a coaching call. There's really great expert guests that come on, and John Dolan, I don't know if y'all are photography people in the audience, but he's a very well-renowned photographer who does amazing work, and he shot the Biden wedding at the White House, helped shoot it. And he was talking to us and talking about his failures, what we were just talking about. And I'm like, John Dolan, like, everybody loves his work, and he's talking about failures and learning from them. So I think it's so valuable to know that everybody fails and we grow from our failures, and just hearing that from other people and interacting is so important. So networking groups, coaching, and masterminds are so important to continue learning. I had some advice years ago at a conference, a photography conference in Las Vegas. I don't even remember who said it, but I wish I did so I could thank them. But they said, anything that you don't do well and takes you a lot of time and you don't enjoy, give it away. Because while they're doing that for you, you can be staying in your lane doing the thing that makes you money. And so for me, that was bookkeeping and accounting, like right away. I was like, don't like numbers. What takes an accountant or bookkeepers 2 hours to do takes me 10. And I don't like it, and I don't love digging into numbers. So I gave that away like 15 years ago and haven't looked back. But it was such good advice, because I think we can get so into the weeds that we get out of our lane and not able to focus on what we do best, that actually sparks our passions and helps us make money. So for me, my people are, I have a virtual assistant in India who helps me with some editing sometimes when I get bogged down in the weeds, and I have, accountants. I'm in this mastermind group and coaching group. I'm in industry networking groups. I have a really good financial planner that keeps me in line and keeps me in check. And what else? Yeah, that's about it. That's the main ones.
Good support.
Yeah.
Holly, you have employees.
Yes, I'm
And
on here
you want
tonight.
to talk about that? Just, that would be, I think, helpful for people in HR and financial, along with what Heather said.
Yeah, that was so good. I love what Heather said about knowing your strengths and weaknesses. I almost feel like it's more important to know your weaknesses than your strengths a lot of times, because it's very important to pass things off. But I feel like for our business, what we do is so odd. And instead of waking up in the morning and being like, here's our schedule, by the end of the day, I would say that we probably are doing something totally different than what we had planned out to do, because we do a lot of crisis communications. And we work, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of Rock the South, but we do all the communications for their team. So these are huge festivals, and it's not if something's gonna happen, it's what's gonna happen. And so it's a lot of stress, and it's a lot of decision-making on the fly, and you have people screaming and cussing, and what do we do next, and the weather, all these crazy things. So I feel like really having a team around you that you trust is really important. And so I have one of my employees here tonight, and she's fantastic. I would probably say, like, my resource, this is crazy, would probably be like voice texting. I love voice texting. Because I'm a talker, I'm a communicator. So that's almost kind of like what I would say I love to do is like communicate with people and get ideas. I loved what Heather said about like, you can always learn, you can always know better, you can learn more from God. And just giving Him complete control and peace over your day is the best way to start. So I would say for me, like I try to really kind of prioritize because I have 3 small kids. I take things that I learn on a daily basis and I try to like teach the people I work with, learn from them and what they can teach me from something, but then also use it as an opportunity to teach my kids. Because they're around me a lot when things happen and they're like, what happened and what are you having to do? And so I try to use that as like a teaching moment of like, here's how this happened. And I think as a child or even as a young adult, I thought, oh, adults are smart. They don't make bad decisions. They don't get angry. But then as you get older, you're like, I'm working with an adult and my 8-year-old is more mature than they are. So I think a lot of times it's kind of just like, when God is your focus and He is who you kind of start your day with, you feel more confident about your decision making. And I think that's the number one thing I would say. It's not so much like who does my bookkeeping or HR, it's the team that I have and the friendships that I have, because I have a sweet friend who's here tonight who's a great entrepreneur too. And so I think it's throwing out ideas with other people. And then I love reading Christian books by authors. Jeannie Allen is one of my favorite authors. If you haven't read her books, I read them over and over again, so kind of more in the summer. I don't really have a lot of time in like the fall and the spring and things like that, but her books are so good, and I try to read and outline a lot of things and just put it into practice. And I kind of rely, I guess, on like friendships. Entrepreneur WBL is fantastic. A lot of people from my small group are here tonight. So I would say surrounding yourselves with other entrepreneurs, other believers, friends that you know and trust and can get their advice, people that you know can make confident decisions on the fly, and then look for Christian authors that may be able to give you advice in ways that you don't feel like you're as strong. The Jeannie Allen, her newest book is about emotions and like how to take those emotions and like how to deal with those. And one of my old bosses said to me, and I love this, he was like, the biggest advice I can give you is that danger is 1 letter away from anger. You will make the worst decisions you ever make if you're angry. You have to really think through, if you're in a moment of anger or passion or anything like that, dealing with your emotions before you make those decisions is really a smart thing to do. And I love that advice. So I think as women, we can kind of get emotional about things, we're sensitive. I think as I've gotten older, I'm kind of not sensitive at all, which isn't good either. But I've tried to kind of know how to turn it off and stay focused and really say, okay, God, this is a really, we had a really bad fight at Rock the South this year. And just having to deal with that and just, these are thousands of people's jobs. This is a huge company. Like, give me the words to say and how to help someone handle a bad situation, because so many of the situations that we handle on a day-to-day basis have to do with crisis and people's jobs and their livelihood, and that's a lot of pressure. It's really hard, and sometimes it's hard to shut it off at night. But I think, again, there's an app called the First 15 app. I don't know if y'all have heard of it, but one of my good friends, Kelly Brown, writes for them. And I just kind of start my day with that. And then at the end of the day, I loved how Ashley said this, I try to give myself grace. Like, there were all these things I needed to do today, but God, where you pulled me today is where you wanted me to be. And so I'm not going to be angry at myself on the things that I didn't get done. I'm going to say, this phone call happened, or this situation happened, and I'm just thankful that you put me here, and I'm going to think about the next day the same way. And so I think that kind of helps, put your perspective in the right mindset and kind of stay focused on what He wants to. Because as an entrepreneur, all you're doing is putting out fires, or even in your own business, it's a lot of things that are unpredictable. And so I think, I'll try to set like alarms on my phone and take time to pray during the day, or to kind of like, I tell my kids this, but okay, this time every day I'm going to shoot a text to somebody to encourage them. it may be another entrepreneur or maybe a friend that's dealing with something, but I'm gonna check in with them and take the focus off of me and my day and what I'm working on and put it on someone else. And I feel like sometimes being overwhelmed, you forget about the gratitude of how you need to be focused as an entrepreneur or how you need to put an emphasis on someone else. And when you do that, it kind of takes the burdens or the things that are bothering you and just puts them in the right mindset. So I do little weird things like that. And I guess, I don't know, not necessarily the best accountant or the best HR, but those people are helpful, but I could try to kind of come up with things that are a little bit more small to kind of help me through my day, I guess.
Yeah, super practical. I love both what you and Heather said there. So let's circle back to that. Let's talk a little bit about anxiety, fear, worry, the things that when those are going to come up. What are some of the other spiritual disciplines or disciplines, like Holly was talking about, that the rest of you might put into place to kind of keep on focus here?
I don't know if I want to follow Holly. I think she kind of touched on everything. I mean, practically speaking, I think in addition to those little things, like for me, what works, it's funny, I was telling them I'm not really a worrier, which is bizarre because I come from a very long line of warriors. I think I would be, but so anxiety's not really been something that I've dealt with. I mean, when we started the company and all those things, that really didn't, I don't know, I didn't really feel that, but I did feel that this past summer. I started struggling with anxiety, and it was the first time, and it was mostly brought on because of a lack of sleep, but where was the lack of sleep coming from? I mean, it could have just been any number of things that was triggering that, and I did have to learn how to deal with anxiety for the first time in my life, and it was debilitating, and so just, practically speaking, I ultimately, after going to see doctors and all sorts of things, I ultimately decided, okay, I have to put some things in place in my life that are going to pull me out of this somehow, because this is not my natural inclination. Like, something's triggered this, there's such small things, but altogether they worked. Like, one of the things was every morning I would go out and I would walk every single morning, and just having the sunshine on my face, I would listen. My brother's a pastor of a church in Atlanta, so I would listen to one of his sermons, or I'd listen to a podcast, or I'd listen to nothing, and I would just pray. I mean, that one thing made a difference, and also making sure that I got up at the exact same time every morning. Healthy eating, cutting bread out of my life, not having that glass of wine, or whatever. I mean, it was just these small things that when you put them all together, they worked. And so I don't know, I mean, I can get into more of that if anybody is curious, but it was just something that I feel like maybe it could have been a lot of things at once came on, and it brought that anxiety. It did affect my work because I was so exhausted that it was really hard to work. So when you talk about having a wonderful team around you, that team was able to pull everything off. If I wasn't fully there, then that was okay. But I don't know. I just think what you said is amazing, and in addition, just some practical things that you can implement in your life every single day that makes a difference, because I think you touched on how take the focus off of you. And I love that, because that's what I was doing, and I wasn't even realizing I was doing that. I would go out and I would walk, I would walk away from work, and I would gather myself, and it made a huge difference.
And I love what you said about, just how you make bad decisions through emotion. And I know I feel like some of the poor decisions I've made about business have been out of an emotional state and controlling that. And I think on top of that, I think making decisions out of fear instead of hope are totally different. Making a decision out of hope versus fear.
Fabulous. It's really good. Well, I loved your advice that you had said. Somebody gave you some great advice too. And you didn't remember who it was, but you loved that. What other bits of good advice that you all have received that you have found helpful that you can pass along?
I have something that I actually read in a Brene Brown book. I do love her books, and one thing that has helped me is she talked about a man named John Gottman who studied relationships for 30 years, and he talks about what he calls sliding door moments, and this has just helped me, a lot with my husband, or just other people in my life, because when you do own a business or you're just busy with work, I know for me, like, my downtime is so important to me, and I would definitely, like, season this with grace. It's not like you can't ever just, you have to protect your downtime, and you have to have that, but sometimes I feel like I can have a lot of scarcity and just think, I don't have enough, to give to other people, because I just, maybe want to play Wordle or something, to just like totally decompress and, not want to give of myself. And so he talks about in the book that, he's in the bed one night and he's reading this great murder mystery, and he's got like 10 pages left, and he thinks he knows who did the murder. And all he wants to do is get up and go brush his teeth and get back in the bed and finish the book. So he gets up and he goes to brush his teeth, and his wife is in the bathroom, and he can tell that she's upset. And he just thinks to himself, just keep walking, just keep walking. But he thinks to himself, I have a decision to make. I can either connect with her. It's like a moment of connection or a moment of betrayal. And so, like, me reading that has just stuck in my mind so much, because whether it's like I see a number coming up on caller ID, or I'll see my husband and I can tell something's wrong, but I'm in the middle of something, or I'm just wanting to go to sleep, and that it's really made a difference for me to think, about choosing him in that moment and choosing the moment of connection. And so that has been a huge thing for me, just to, and also just one other quick thing, my mom has dementia. And so she's had that, I thought my 50s were going to be really easy, and this first 5 years of it have been, I've had a lot of anxiety, but one thing, just trying to plan, visits with her, and I actually, go to a counselor / life coach, and she's really helped me with that and reminding me that it's really more for me than it is even for my mom, because my mom, she can't remember, when I go to see her, but just, choosing that time with her too, and going to see my dad. But anyway, just making those, just again, getting the focus off of myself and, doing those things. And I put the verses in my phone, and also just journaling. I know I also realized that there are some things I've done and I didn't realize that it was getting the focus off of myself, but when I had an index card with people that I was praying for and journaling that, and that was something that was really helpful for me too. Kind of all over the place, but.
Great. Anyone else want to talk about that?
I would say one of the things I think is a female in the South, like you come out of school, you start working with other females, and I would have different jobs, and I could quickly tell the women that were extremely competitive, and then the women that wanted to invest in other people. And so I feel like I have worked with some amazing women, and that's something that I'm teaching my daughters now, is like, jealousy is just the root of evil. Like, you want to invest in other people, you want to nurture them, never see them as competition, or, don't compare yourself to them. God made you unique and special. My mom used to tell me, like, there will always be someone that's prettier, smarter, faster than you, like, and that's true. Like, God made you unique, and He gave you a certain passion in your heart and talents. And so, as an entrepreneur, or as a woman in business, like, finding other women to invest in is really important. And that was something kind of I learned early on, and like I said, I've tried to do with other women. But I will also say the other side of that is, as women, like, you can, and especially as a business owner, you can feel like just run dry. And someone said to me the other day, and I loved this, they were like, God had, Jesus, when He was on earth, had 12 disciples that were His best friends. And He impacted a lot, but He used His best friends to make an impact on the world. You don't have to be all things to all people. You can have a small circle and make a really big impact. And so I love that, because I think about, like, Jesus' friends and His disciples, and sometimes they betrayed Him, like, they weren't great friends. But in the end, when it came push come to shove, they went out and they spread His gospel to all the nations, and they, were wonderful friends in the end and did what He wanted to do. And so even though He was reaching thousands and ultimately so much. Like, it's important sometimes, I think, in different circles, like I loved what you said about, I think we're all kind of getting to that age where we have ailing parents, and it's heartbreaking. And so I think there's times where you have to give yourself grace and say, I need to step back. I have a child that's struggling in school. I have a parent that's ill. I have a close friend that's going through something. And I think you'll never regret spending time with them over work. Like, when you're 80 years old, are you going to remember missing the meeting? Or are you going to remember not being present for a friend? I loved how you talked about being present, because it's easy to be like, I'm overwhelmed and I just need to focus on myself. But you're going to remember the things you miss for others that aren't work-related. So I think, again, if you need to make your circle smaller during different parts of your life, I think that that's, wise and good. Jesus did that when he was on earth, and he went and prayed and was by himself in the desert. So I think, alone time is good, small groups are good. And I'm kind of big too on not necessarily telling everybody what I'm doing all the time. I'm somewhat of kind of a private person, and I like to kind of help behind the scenes and really pray through how I want to do things. And I feel like that a lot of times kind of helps me make good business decisions or good friendship decisions, and a bigger impact if I can really spend a lot of quiet time focused on stuff. So I think in the South, we love to talk a lot, and we love to be, you have the pressure of having everybody at your home or your office or taking that phone call, and that can be hard. But I think when you kind of look back, it's like, okay, the times that I was quieter, I feel like I was able to rest, refocus, and make a bigger impact overall, so don't be afraid to do that.
I'd like to piggyback on what she said about competition. One of my favorite sayings, I guess, I can't remember who said it. I can't remember who says anything. Is a rising tide raises all ships. And I think, the picture of that is if we all help each other, then whatever industry it's in, instead of being competitive and territorial, which can really happen, it happens a lot in my industry, I know, is if we all help each other, then we're all going to be better because of it, and then our clients are really going to benefit from it. They're going to get an even better experience, an even, more experienced photographer, someone who's learned from other people. And, really what does that boil down to? That's what the Lord would have us do. I mean, he doesn't want us to protect everything we know. I mean, I can still name the people who came alongside me early in my business when I was hungry, and blood, sweat, and tears, wanting to know things and asking questions and figuring things out. And they came alongside me just by the goodness of their heart and the kindness. I wasn't paying them. They just were kind and wanted to help. And I can literally right now name all those people going 20 years back who were just willing to be kind and help. And I think it's so important to pay that forward, and I think that's what the Lord would have us do. I think that demonstrates a lot of the fruit of the Spirit of just helping others, and then we're all better because of it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That's great. Which, I love that y'all are answering the questions before I ask them. This is great. This is great. I was going to ask about working. You have so many other needs in front of you. Children, husband, family, parents, whatever, community, your church, all of these things. Ashley, you have 4 children. Anyone thing you want to add?
The $1 million question.
Is there
the balance myth?
Yeah, the myth of balance, right?
Yeah. I don't think, I certainly don't have the perfect formula for sure. And I think for me, it's been just different seasons of life look different, and being okay with that. There's seasons where, when I was writing my book, I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm running a business all day, I come and get my kids, and at night I'm writing, and I'm in the kitchen. And it was but it was a season. It was 10 months, and yes, I was tired, but it was doable and manageable. And I had a lot of help, and I used every help I could take. Friends helped me do the carpool, my mom, whatever it was. And so, I think just the Lord provides, for each step of the way. And so for me, I don't think there's some magic formula of you need to spend this much time working and then this much time with your kids and then this, it just doesn't work life doesn't work like that. And so, I just feel like I have to constantly give it over to the Lord of okay, you've called me to do this. We invest in really great people, which I have one of my managers here tonight, and just knowing, okay, where to let things go and let my people do their job, which they can all do it way better than me, so it works out great. So, just kind of all those things together, I feel like is what, I don't think there's any kind of perfect balance formula for a working mother, you know?
Well, you and Jennifer both work with your husbands.
Yeah.
Any tips on that?
Give me some tips.
I mean, we work together and we really we work from home and we are both there together all day, every day. It works beautifully for us. And I don't know, I mean, part of my story is that when I started the company in 2015, I had the idea in 2014. And then, I'm a data-driven person because I'm an accountant, and so I did tons of research and tons of due diligence and tons of forecasting and how am I going to fund this thing, so I went armed into starting a company. And I loved the idea of the company. I knew there was a gap in the market, but also over here on the side, my husband was in an extremely stressful job, and he had been in the financial industry for more than 15 years. He was working for a New York firm. They had just changed over management. The stress was just enormous, and he was having health issues. And so in my head, as I'm doing all this research, I'm like, this could turn into something, and this could potentially be an option for him to get out of that. And so that was a real driver for me and a real motivating, you had said, which I thought was so interesting, you said, I started my business because I wanted to stay home with my children. And I didn't have the idea to start the business for the purpose of my husband being able to get out of that situation, but it was always there, and it was a hope, and it was something we prayed about, and something we worked toward, and in the third year, he was able to do that. So, I think maybe that also affected the fact that I was like, yes, he can do this, and he's not on the road all the time, because he was never at home. I mean, part of his job was traveling all the time, so, during the week, I was at home with a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, and, single mom, carpooling, trying to start a business. So I think for me, him coming into the business is such a blessing, and it was answered prayer. That's something that we've been really hoping for and praying for so long. So, certainly it has its challenges, but with us having our own business, there's so much flexibility in it. He's been able to be at home with the kids and coach sports and all of those things. But practically speaking, truthfully, he's in his office. I am somewhere else in the house, and we don't talk to each other. So, he'll come out and he'll have his lunch, and we'll chat for a minute. If he sees I'm into something, he knows not to chat, and then I think just because of the time of our lives, we're so busy that it's not like in our downtime we're talking about work. We're doing 1,000 things. We're coordinating who's going where, and so I don't know, it works for us. But then there are so many people I'll talk to who are like, I could not work with my husband. I don't know how you do that. So it may be a unique situation that works really beautifully for us. So
We're kind of the same. We do get along. I know it made it sound like we don't, but we work very well together. He is an accountant, and I am not, and I'm creative, and he is not. So we kind of stay in each other's lanes, and it all works. So we joke around that there would not be a business if one of us wasn't in it. Just it wouldn't work. So
well, and when I started the company, hoping that he could get out of the situation, I never dreamed he'd come work with me.
Yeah.
It's all girls.
Yeah.
He was like, but when we started the wholesale side of the business, his job is very similar for Dogwood Hill that he did for his past job. It was just such a seamless, easy fit.
Yeah.
And and we do totally different things for the business, so we don't overlap that much.
Okay, would any specific memories of God's faithfulness that you could share to encourage this group as they might be encountering or anticipating an entrepreneurial role, or in the middle of one, or doubting that they should be in one? Any points that y'all might share with us that would be uplifting and encouraging?
I can start out with one. So my dad always tells the story. He was like, he sold knives like when he was in college to pay for college, and he was like, I would go up to front doors and be like, hey, I have all these Cutco knives. Like, he was like a customer. He said people would slam the door in my face, and then I realized it was because I had not, He's always been a salesman. He's insurance now, but I think the biggest thing is that if no matter what field you're in, even if you're an entrepreneur or not, there'll be things that'll be big disappointments, and there will be doors that shut. I remember we had worked for this company for like 10 years, and we had gone through like several marketing directors, and what I do is PR, so it's very different. But I sat down one day with this lady, and she was like the third marketing person we worked with. The other two were amazing, we loved them. And she was kind of fairly new, and she was like, from the day I came in and took this role, I've been thinking about how I was going to use my own people. And I thought, oh my gosh, the 10 years that we've given to this business and all the messes we got out of them and the blood, sweat, and tears and the time I've taken away from my kids and my friends to help this business, this lady is so rude. And I remember getting in the car and calling Abby, on my colleague here, and we talked about it. And I was like, you know, every door, somebody always says this to me, and I love it, and it's like, rejection from someone else is God's protection. And I love that. And so now that we look back, we're like, you know what, this was such a blessing this door closed, because now we have all these other opportunities we wouldn't have taken unless that had happened. And he took someone being really rude and who could have said, you know, I wanted to bring in my own team and something like that. And the way she handled it was all wrong. But it really helped me learn, number one, to have tough skin, to trust when God closes a door that he has something better. And if he puts a passion and desire in your heart and you have something happen that you're like, this is not what I was expecting and I'm so discouraged, not to give up. Because I think there's a reason why God puts things on our hearts and minds, and if you feel like he's leading you to start a business, or he's leading you to take a new career, or bring your husband in, or go help a friend start something, there's a reason for that. And so don't be afraid to try, just because something might be a little bit off kilter. Because I think then, you know, sometimes bad circumstances and things that happen, you can then tell the story to someone else. Here's what happened to me and how I dealt with it. I think that's really important. And then also another great book that I'm currently reading off a friend is Boundaries and Goodbyes by Lisa Tykers. It's excellent. If you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. And it does talk about relationships, but I think that can deal with work too. Everybody has worked with someone at work and you're like, this is not my person. They have an anger problem, they forget everything that I do, they talk down to people. I had a boss once who I still love and keep in touch with, but there was this girl that I worked with named Jackie, and Jackie's daughter got sick all the time, and he would be like, Jackie's missing the conference call, and I was like, oh, poor Jackie. I never want to work here when I have kids, because he would use kind of the women in the business who had like kid emergencies or a kid sick or something, and kind of use them as a model of how they miss things, and it really bothered me. And so I think, again, you can love people that you work with, and you can take great experiences and think about the positive things about them, but also say, I got to create a healthy boundary here. This person, I may work with them in the office, but I don't necessarily have to hang out with them outside the office. That wouldn't be good for me. Or maybe it's time for me to move to another department, and that is okay. Like, God calls us to be kind to other people. He wants us to be kind to other people. But again, I'm going to go back to the keeping your circle small thing. I think it's important in a lot of ways, because that's God guarding your heart from things that you need to be distant from. So I would highly recommend that book. It's really good, and I think it helps kind of create some boundaries in the workplace if you feel like there's some situations that aren't bad, but you might not necessarily need to leave your job, or you want to start something new. So it's great.
I think I'm hiring Holly.
Any other points of faithfulness that God has?
I have one.
Yes.
Probably 15 years ago, or I don't know, terrible at the time, I had to let my main manufacturer go, and it was so hard and so scary. She was in Houston, but she just kept being really late with our, sending the clothes to us, and I was offering her weekly bonuses, literally, to get us the clothes on time, and she just could not do it. And so Emily and I had to drive to Houston with a U-Haul, and I loved this woman. Like, I probably had crossed every boundary. We were I was very invested in her, and it was awful. And she and her husband were sitting across her. She was sobbing, saying, why are you doing this to me? And it was just terrible, but I knew we had to do it. And then I'm definitely a bulldog when it comes to, that's just one thing that that's one thing that has served me well, where I might not have other qualities, but so I picked up the phone. I remember Emily thinking, oh my gosh, you're not going to find another work for it. There's no way. But I picked up the I just was like looking in Google, and my new workroom that I have, she's like, I don't even know how I was in Google. And she happened to answer the phone on a Saturday, but I know that it was, I mean, the Lord just provided her, and that was just so unbelievable, because she is above and beyond anything I could have ever imagined. I mean, her integrity, her work ethic, and it was just an unbelievable thing. And I just said, she didn't want to do it at first, but I just said, if you'll just meet with me just one time, and we can talk about it, and then if you say no, I won't bother you again. And anyway, the rest is history. So
I can speak to the Lord's faithfulness. So I'm probably the only one in this group that's like a single divorced mom, a divorced single mom. And, you know, God writes our story. We don't write our story. I did not see it coming. I mean, I did see it coming. I felt it was inevitable in my situation. But, you know, you stay in it as long as you can, and you don't want that to be your story. But I can look back through my entire career, and every single thing that I experienced led me to where I am now to provide for myself. And, you know, you think that's where fear and worry and anxiety can come in, because you think, oh my gosh, like mortgage, kids' college, weddings, you know, all the things that can just weigh you down. And if you put it in one big bucket and go, all that's on me, you're like, I'm going to be in fetal position in the corner, you know? But like, it's so neat to look back that even my move to Nashville was part of God writing my story to be able to provide for myself, because of the opportunities that He allowed me to have in Nashville with a home situation and direct flights out of the Nashville airport that I don't have from Birmingham. Just all of these little details and big details that was truly, I can see now as the Lord setting me up to be on my own, and Him saying again, I've got you. And every time that I worry, and because I'm like basically straight commission, if I'm not shooting, so I'm saying this to encourage other people. Hopefully you're not having to walk the walk of divorce or single mom. But if you are, there are a lot of us in this world that have to do it. But I want to encourage you, because you know, when I was going through all that, I prayed three things. I prayed for rescue. I prayed because it was a not a good, healthy situation. I prayed for rescue, I prayed for protection, and I prayed for provision. I've never talked about this in public. And He answered it in every way. So, sorry to get emotional, sorry for the waterworks, but I do want to encourage you that, like, even when you think, how is God going to provide? If I'm not shooting, I'm not making money. When is the next, you know, assignment or job or wedding coming in? And as soon as I start to worry, He's there going, see, I gotcha. It's all good. Like, you just trusted me. And that was something when I was meeting with my therapist a lot through the divorce. She was like, pray for specifics. And I said this earlier, pray for specifics. Because when He answers those specifics, it's crazy how much your faith will grow, because we can pray big general things, but when we pray such specifics and we see Him answer it, it really will blow you away and build your faith in a way that you just can't imagine. So that's my story of faithfulness.
Yeah. Well, a perfect ending. I'm sorry that our time is quickly slipping away. And before I thank this group, I just want to encourage you to go look at their websites and see their work. I have only given you not even a little dust of their abilities and their accomplishments and their bios that I read tonight. But I also want to make sure that you don't miss the bigger bio here. And that's who these women are. For them and for me, our only hope and comfort in life and in death is that we belong body and soul to our faithful Savior, Jesus Christ, who has paid for all of our sins with His precious blood and has set us free. And because of that, He preserves us in a way that not a hair on our head falls without His permission. And through His Holy Spirit, He assures us of eternal life. And He equips us to live for Him here and now. Can you believe it? The God of the universe, who created us and knows our hearts and our desires and our wants for a job and our all of the things, and he also knows our jealousies and our envies and our lack of trust and our hypocrisy and our untruthfulness and the muck that's in our hearts. He loves us. And through his Son, he rescues, as you just talked about rescuing, and delivers us. So the only eternal bio worth having, and this is a group of accomplished women, I am just so privileged to sit by them, but I'm telling you, the only eternal bio that's worth having is that because of the person and work of Jesus Christ, we are well-loved daughters of the King who have in him everything we need for life and godliness. So will you help me thank these women for sharing?